Okay, so I'm here today, folks. We're doing a quick... I've hooked up with an old, I wouldn't say friend, but an acquaintance. We had an interview back in 2012, Steven D Kelley, and they wrote a book. Is it Lasers, Caves, and something? What was the book called again? Magic?
Lasers, Cavers, and Magic. I would say old friend. I thought about that earlier. Yeah. And I would say old friend. I mean, come on, dude.
That's good. That's good.
I fixed your back. Yeah,
you did.
Like, you know what I mean? So
back in 2012, I had to have an operation on my back, and after the operation, it was giving me pain again. And then during the interview with Stephen, he explained to me that you do Reiki healing, and they'd done this remote healing on me after the show and everything, and I couldn't believe it. It did seem to work, and my back pain has never came back to that level again. Although I get a few twinges now and again, but certainly I was considering shit. I thought I was going to have another operation.
You should have called me, man. When the pain comes back, you should have called me.
Well, no.
Hey, you know what? I mean, okay, like just today's Saturday, right? And I know we were talking about QAnon and stuff. And I've got this QAnon group, which I've been officially kicked off of Facebook, but the group's still there, and I have my ways of getting in there.
All right.
Every Saturday we do healing. I do healing there in the group.
All right.
Healing
What's the name of the group?
QAnon, Q-A-N-O-N.
Just that. That's all it is.
Yeah, the QAnon name. That's
okay.
Okay, before we get too far deep, remind me, we got to talk about Roger Stone, okay?
Actually, was it you or that? I actually searched Roger Stone today. It might have been because you were talking about somehow.
Probably.
Who is Roger Stone? I've never looked at that one.
Oh, okay. Well, Roger Stone was just released from jail, and he was basically he's most famous for being the dirty trickster guy that worked for Richard Nixon. So he goes back really far. But he's also was connected to kind of like that Roy Cohn thing and Jeffrey Epstein, that whole gang. But the thing is that he just got out of jail, and there's another one of his cronies, Paul Manafort, who also went to jail. And both of these guys had a lobbying firm, and one of their clients was Ferdinand Marcos, who they took $1 million a year from Ferdinand Marcos when he was alive, when he was still president of the Philippines. And during that period of time, Ferdinand Marcos was shipping containers with 10-year-old children inside these containers to the port of Los Angeles, where they would be delivered to J. Paul Getty in his villa in Malibu. And this is where the beginning of all this underground sex slave on an industrial scale stuff started. But the thing is that this is obviously attached to Donald Trump. And the reason why I'm really have an issue with Roger Stone is because he was like a media advisor for Trump. So his job was to get out there and try to capture the internet and control the dialogue. And he was a buzz man. He was a fixer, just like the rest of these guys. And when I created the QAnon group, I took over the QAnon movement, and he didn't like that. So they went to a lot of trouble to try to take the page back. And what they did actually was they had quite a few operatives working on this scheme. And somebody actually was able to penetrate Facebook here in California, I guess it is, and steal the digital key necessary to gain access to the account of one of my admins so that they could hopefully try to remove me from the group and take over the group. But I was paying attention, so as soon as this penetration took place, I immediately called the person whose account was compromised, and he contacted Facebook, and they shut down Facebook for 1 billion people. Once they realized that these so-called digital keys had been stolen, they had to. Originally, it was like 900,000 or 900 million people were affected. But it got up to about 1 billion people that were affected, including Mark Zuckerberg. Every single one of these accounts had to be signed out, and the person had to use an ID to sign back in. Right. So this was a big security thing that they did, and nobody realizes. They think that this little QAnon group is no big deal, but this was a major effort that affected 1 billion people, they're right. And they failed. And not only did they fail, Roger Stone subsequently went to jail for one reason or another. And that just goes to show what happens when you screw with me.
Yeah. So on that note, I was just thinking there, people don't really have a background of who you are and how you've got this kind of power, for instance. So we're going to actually go, this is just a wee trial that I'm doing in this software, people. We're going to do 10, 15 minutes chat here, and then we're going to arrange another meeting where we'll invite you to come and join us. So if you want to give us some background to yourself, Stephen, obviously you were in the CIA and you've done the lasers thing, and then you've went and been like a whistleblower to a certain extent. Would you like to tell us yourself?
Right. Well, first of all, yes, this is a little tease because, you know, he does his thing on Facebook and YouTube and what have you. And of course, I've been kicked off of Facebook completely, so I don't know how we'll figure out a way. But just to be relatively short, I was a CIA contractor as well as an NSA contractor, and it was primarily having to do with building lasers, but originally it had to do with finding equipment and whatever it was that Saddam Hussein needed. Okay, prior to the invasion of Iraq, this was when the war with between Iran and Iraq was going on. Saddam, the CIA helped him get his whatever he wanted, and obviously those were back in the days when the United States was sending him chemical weapons and all that. But we worked on trying to hook him up with Motorola radios. And you know, but anyway, but that went south, and you know, so I just want to.
So you weren't actually a member of the CIA then; you were contracted to work for them. Because they say that when you're in the CIA, you're always in the CIA.
Well, you know, that's the funny thing because first of all, the organization and all these secret organizations, you can use whatever name you want; it doesn't really matter. They're really a lot larger than people let on. In other words, the CIA, whatever, would have an official payroll with so many employees that are on the records or officially off the records, but are actually getting checks from the government. There's all those people. Then there's the people that the government never pays, and they're still CIA, and they're getting their money from theft and exploitation, working the system, like, for instance, the asset forfeiture system. Everybody thinks, you know, when stuff is confiscated at the in customs or for tax evasion or drug dealers or any kind of thing like that, where they take away the property of criminals or people they say are criminals, this property very often is used to fund the CIA and the NSA. And this is a huge amount of money. It's a huge source of funding for them. A lot of the black projects are funded by that money right there, the money that's confiscated from people. But just to go on, though, when I was working for the NSA, they didn't say they were the NSA. They said they were the CIA. We were actually brought into this by Richard Nixon's nephew, okay, Don Nixon. And it's interesting when I talk about Roger Stone because his son, Tyler Nixon, is Roger Stone's attorney. So the connections here are crazy. So basically, I was working for the Ollie North gang. I didn't know it. I thought we were working for the CIA, but what we were doing was we were building these lasers, and of course the lasers weren't just for sale to law enforcement or whatever. They were for the Contras. They would actually take these things and give them to the Contra rebels. So the Contra rebels had advanced technology, but in the jungle where they were fighting, this kind of technology gave them an advantage because there was a shade. So the laser worked really well. Put it on a gun or a rocket or whatever. And but the thing is, they did quite a bit of other stuff, and this was all before Desert Storm or any of that, Kuwait and everything. And a lot of the lasers and stuff we built did end up being used in Kuwait and all that precision bombing stuff they did. So that's when the world changed. But that's where I had my falling out too, was because when they told me about the mass murder, you know, the atrocities, when they would go into the jungle and kill like a whole village and bury the whole village. That's sort of where I freaked out and decided that's where I lost my innocence and realized that we weren't the good guys anymore.
Yeah, you were sold a lie, as we all are to some extent.
But but I didn't. It didn't stop. I mean, it didn't stop obviously at that point, but it changed. Right. I woke up, but eventually I got to work for these guys I call the cavers, who are the ones that they live in the bunkers.
Okay, because there is a whole underground world going on that we know nothing about. Yeah, like it's massive. All these tunnels all around the world. I mean, just the world isn't a spinning ball flying through space. You know, it's a flat Earth. Yeah. Stationary.
No, I don't believe in the flat Earth. The thing about the ball, when you understand the physics and the quantum physics, because I'm all about the different densities and the third density and fourth density and all that, and the electromagnetic spectrum, it works the same way no matter what. And when you, like, for instance, if you look at an electromagnetic wave, we're getting a lot of feedback, dude, where you have you've got a magnetic wave and you've got a frequency. There's two different things going on. But the point is that one thing is always revolving around another, and they're always creating these spherical shapes. And the thing is like the planets, they actually work the same exact way as like an atom or a photon or a particle. And if the thing is if you look at creation, and that means all matter in the universe, just all matter, that everything that we can perceive and everything that we can't perceive. If you take all of that stuff, it all works via certain rules. And these rules are linear, meaning the ratios of energy to mass from the smallest particle are going to be linear by comparison to the largest thing that we could possibly detect, like a black hole or something of this nature. So by using these rules, we can determine certain information that we can't perceive. Like, for instance, our ability to go into the micro is limited. We can only go so small. But we can, by using these rules, we can understand that as we go further down, it's going to be the same thing. And when you realize this, one of the things that you're going to see is that everything is fractal. It's, you've heard that before, like, I'm sure.
Like the Mandelbrot set, where you can keep going in and in and in.
Exactly. That's the nature of reality is exactly like that.
Yeah.
And the point is that basically what this is getting into is what they call sacred geometry.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would consider sacred geometry as being voodoo or some hocus pocus type of thing. But no, it's not. It's actually the very basic quantum physics. It's most basic quantum physics. And that's why you see these geometric shapes like the Star of David, the Masonic symbols and all this.
Well, these symbols that Carl Jung told that affected our consciousness because they are part of us, basically. So that's why these symbols have an effect on us. Because it's like a language.
Well,
kind of thing.
It's the language is not per se a language. I mean, a language, yes, language as far as like sigils and things that contain intention, images. That's a little bit different. But for instance, like, you hear people talking about pyramid power and stuff like that.
Okay.
There is a thing to it. And when you see these triangles and they're, one's pointing up and one's pointing down, essentially this has to do with the nature of our reality, which is the energy. The energy travels in these two directions. So you can almost think of it as the arrow travels in one way, the arrow travels in the other way. And I'll share something with you just real fun here real quick, because this is some really pure physics, but it's actual science here. This is called the right hand rule. Okay, if you take your right hand, you make a thumbs up like this with your fingers like this.
Okay.
Basically, what that means is that if you have an electromagnetic wave going in a certain direction, okay, in other words, like a current, okay, you're going to have a magnetic field going around that current, and it's going to go in one direction only, always, like your fingers will show you the curve that it's going. So in other words, when the energy is going upwards, it's going counterclockwise.
Okay.
Okay. But when it's going downwards, it's going clockwise.
Okay.
Okay. This is exactly how energy works. Male energy goes down clockwise. Female energy goes up counterclockwise. That's your yin and yang. That's your chakras. That's your chi. That's your orgone. That's your AM, FM, that's your electromagnetic spectrum. That's the entire universe right there. So when you understand these basic things, then you can also understand how when the moon goes around the Earth, it's doing the same exact thing. When the Earth is going around the sun and they're having their orbits, they're doing the same exact thing. The movements are exactly the same as the fields and the particles do. They all do the same thing. They all go in the same directions. They all have the same rules. And it's the nature of life in itself, because without movement, there is no life. There's no intention. And the movement carries the intention, and the intention is the information. So, I mean, you could go on and on and on, but it's really, really, really basic. It's really simple, to be honest with you. I mean, and that's how simple it is,
So you're basically saying that the Earth is a spinning ball at 1,000 miles per hour going through the cosmos, and the sun is 66,000 miles away, and all these things that official science gives to us.
I'll tell you one of the greatest constants in the universe, and that is the speed of light. And everything that you do, it's everything. There are so many laws and great mathematicians and scientists. You could go down the list, but they've all basically, especially in the physics, when you get into physics and when you get into this electromagnetic spectrum and the way it behaves, you start to realize that there are certain constants. One of those constants is the speed of light. No matter what happens, it's like when you have an unknown, you have two knowns, and when you have an unknown, it's really easy to solve for the unknown. And we can keep going back and forth in every direction. And this is what they've done. This is how they calculated the speed of light, because there's all these equations out there that basically all go to the same place. So one of the biggest problems that Earth humans have when it comes to understanding some of this phenomena, especially when it comes to celestial phenomena, is that there is this concept of the densities, okay? And we always try to understand every phenomena that we can perceive or try to analyze in terms that relate to our reality. It's like a clock. If you get off this silly globe and you get off this moving thing, there is no time, linear time. It just goes away. It's an illusion. But we get this, because we have the sunrise, sunset thing, we've got this calendar, we've got all this stuff. It's an absolute illusion. Mm-hmm. And the same can be said for your perspective on just about everything else. It's like when you're doing, when we do, like the Reiki and the healing, obviously, you're not on the earth when you do that. Before you even get there, it's like you have to get way out in space to where you're looking down at everything, and you realize once you do that, you realize how everything is insignificant. Okay, in other words, for instance, humanity, 7 billion people, we get concerned about crimes, we get concerned about actions of individuals and things that they do, and then we multiply that by the number of humans that we're exposed to, or the number of humans that we're aware of that are doing a certain thing. And we care about these things, and we detest these certain actions, and we endeavor to want to do something to stop this from happening. But think of it like God. When you're that far apart, when you're that far away, and when you are basically looking at the whole thing at once, it's very generalized, and you look at this behavior and it becomes, I don't want to say diluted, but it's more like you know what I mean? It's like there's only so much you can do about it, and when you do so, you have to treat everybody. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you can't. It's like, for instance, here's something that mothers, like this whole business with heaven and serving others and all this sort of thing. When you become enlightened, so to speak, you have to realize that every human out there in the world is basically the same person. Okay, it's you taking turns being that person. Everybody, and your perspective is only from that person's perspective, but it's all going on at the same time. But it actually isn't. But from your perspective, it is. Now, when you realize that, you realize real quick, that's you. that person that you're hating is you. You can't hate yourself. And the same applies to love. And for instance, in a desperate situation, a mother will always do everything she can to try to save her children, give her life for her children. It'll always be, she'll do everything she can for her children before she does something for someone else's children. Okay? If she had to choose between two children to save, she's going to save her own child. This is a big problem because you can't do that. You have to love everybody equally, and you have to lose that individuality, and you have to understand, you have to come to this understanding. And this doesn't have anything to do with the flat earth stuff and all that, but that's really, really important. And just to get back to the flat earth stuff, I'll just tell you, because I don't know if you know this, but before I ever got into the CIA business and the laser business, the laser business was basically came from the optical business. I was a master optician, okay, back when this stuff meant something. And I wasn't just a master optician. I was like one of the best ones in the United States. I worked on all the really ridiculous DARPA projects and stuff like that, okay? And we pushed the boundaries of tolerances. We pushed the state of the art. A lot of the work I did went directly into computer technology, so you could say that a lot of the advances in computer technology were directly attributable to stuff that I did way back when. But the thing is that my specialty was plano, and plano means flat. So I was a polisher of flat surfaces. So I am probably one of the greatest experts on what flat is and what the word flat means and what microscopic shapes look like from a microscopic level, because I can comprehend these things. That was my world. So I'll tell you this, one of the most basic measurements that we have is light. And they use light to build the pyramids. We know this because if we look at some of the surfaces on the stones that were polished, especially on the interior, some of the granite that was polished, flat surfaces, it's polished within a wavelength of light, spherical. So in other words, it's a sphere, but it's a sphere with such a large radius that it appears to be flat. Okay, again, this is the nature of the globe once more. Nope. So the entire all of these surfaces of the pyramid are calibrated to within one wavelength of light. That is what we call a fringe of light. So in other words, if you have a curved surface and you have a perfectly flat surface, when the light goes through it, it's going to bounce back and cause a pattern which looks like a ring. Okay, this is how we measure geometric curvature, etc., etc. So this ring, which is a fringe of light, and of course we're talking about the sun, which means it's polychromatic, it's a rainbow, as opposed to having a monochromatic light source, which would mean that your fringe would be specific to a certain wavelength and it would appear black against a white background. And obviously that's preferable to fine measurement, and this is where the laser comes in. Before the laser, they had to use the sunlight, and the Egyptians did use the sunlight. So in other words, not only were their stones polished to the flatness of a fringe, but the foundation was flat to one fringe of light. Now, what does that mean? That means that the Great Pyramid of Giza solved the ability. In other words, let's say you take a square and you have a ball and you try to put that square on the ball. It's not going to fit, right? Its corners are it's going to sit on the edges, but the corners aren't going to fit. You think it's impossible to make a square fit onto a radius. Not true. The radius has, if you make that square to with one fringe of curvature on all four sides, it's going to fit perfectly on that globe. Now, this is how we know that. Now, how did the Egyptians know this? They knew this because they used mercury. They used water. The same thing the Chinese did when they built their great architecture that's all top secret and all that. But basically what that means is that if you have a pool of water and there are absolutely zero disturbances whatsoever, which is impossible, of course, unless it's inside of a pyramid, right? Because it's all about vibration. See, it's all about vibration. If you're going to be working with light, you need to have zero vibration. How do you get zero vibration? With a whole mass of stone, like the pyramid. All that granite, zero vibration. Perfect lab. So basically, if you have these two pools of water, what's going to happen is the water will form what they call a meniscus. Yeah. The curvature goes down, right? With mercury. Yeah. So actually, the water, the curvature goes up. With mercury, the curvature goes down. Okay, that's called a meniscus. But the actual surface of the water is going to have one fringe convex radius curvature. We know this. It's just the way it is. Now, in other words, if you were to take a laser somehow, a laser interferometer, and you were able to get that water to be able to sit still with no vibration, you would detect a positive curvature of one fringe. Now, why is that? It's because the entire globe has a positive curvature of one fringe. It's just now here's the thing about flat. A one fringe curvature is not very flat. It's like crude. It's relatively crude. If you were to say buy a camera, a Nikon or a Minolta or whatever, back in the old school when it had film, the entire lens system that you had might have a transmitted wavefront of a fringe. Okay, it's not that great. But if you're making something like a semiconductor computer, and you need to have the ultra high resolution, then, or let's say you're making some translation stage where you're going to have something traveling XY, right? So it's going to make a scan. And when it's making a scan, you can't have it, bumping up and down as it's going making a scan. You want to have a perfect. This is all computer science here. That has to be perfectly flat. And so in other words, so now we're talking about fractions of a wavelength. Okay, so we know if let's say the globe has got a one fringe curvature. Now you want to have a flatter. So that means you have to take a smaller segment of that globe. You're taking a tinier section of that radius. Okay, it's still a radius, but it's flat. So in other words, there's no such thing as flat. Flat is infinite because the space between concave and convex is infinite. Dot, 0.00000. It goes on forever. So anyway, the point is that for us to make these super efficient mirrors and what have you, we have to get to within, say, like a 20th of a wave, which is like 40 times flatter than this fringe. Okay, so if you look at the Earth, you think it's all flat and all that. First of all, yeah, it's pretty flat as concerned, but if you want really flat, you've got to get at least 40 times flatter. Now, the National Bureau of Standards, let's say I don't know where it is, but every country has to have something sort of like a National Bureau of Standards. And all of their references, all of their machine tools, all of their whatever is going to be traceable back to this National Bureau of Standards. And the first thing that they're going to have in any of these places is a flat. And in order to make this flat, they'll take 3 flats and they'll compare them against each other. So each one of these flats will cancel out, they'll correct it until each one seems to be perfect. Straight lines, as straight as the lines as they can get. Now bear in mind, when you say straight lines, they're never going to be perfectly straight. They're going to be a little convex, a little concave, and possibly a little irregular. Okay, so when you look at the surface of the Earth, you got 2 things. You've got the radius, and you've got the irregularity, the smoothness and irregularity. So let's say one of these lenses that we'll make a lens that's, say, like a quarter of a wave spherical and a quarter of a wave smooth. Okay, that's not really great. Again, this is like camera quality, telescope quality, not Star Wars quality. But basically, if you were to blow that up to like the size of the Earth, okay, that radius to the size of the Earth, basically you would have a landscape that would appear absolutely flat with no deviations from flat greater than maybe this much. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. So in other words, if you look at the surface of the Earth with the mountains and the fissures and the cracks and all that, it's from an optical standpoint, it's irregular as all hell. Okay, and from a radius standpoint, it isn't round, even close to round. It's all, whatever. It changes too, but gets bulbous and swells here and swells there. If it goes up a millimeter, on one portion of the Earth, that's like a major change from the sense of deviation from smooth. Okay, but the Earth does that. It's like that. But electrically charged. I mean, I'll tell you, people talk about flat Earth. No, if anything, the Earth is hollow. It's a hollow ball. It's a geode. It's just like these rocks that are like round. You split them open, and the inside is hollow, but it's got a bunch of crystals and stuff in there. That's what the Earth is. The Earth. It's only about 800 miles thick, whatever diameter, and it actually has a ball of plasma in the center of it. And this is also pure physics, because it's just like a black hole that we know these black holes spew energy out and the energy comes back, and it's like an atomic explosion every time it boom, boom, boom. And the gravity and everything contains us like a big fusion chamber or something that requires gravity to contain the explosion. That's exactly what the Earth is.
Some people claim that gravity has never been proven, and actually the reason things fall is like density, and like the helium balloon. If gravity was so strong, why can you blow up a helium balloon and it rises if this gravity is pushing everything down,
Well, here's a perfect example right here. Here's 200 liters of compressed oxygen. It doesn't weigh anything. It doesn't weigh anything. You know what I mean? How could that be, right? It's like when they put in all this oxygen, they cram it in there, it does not change the weight of the can. There's no net weight on here anywhere. If anything, they tell you, it says right here on the can, trust us, this can is not empty. So that's the point. Now, here's the thing about gravity. What people need to understand, and this is probably far-fetched, I'm sure you're not going to hear it from anyone else, but if you want to understand the nature of God, that's what gravity is. And people think gravity is a force. No, it's not a force at all. It's instructions. It's information. Remember, energy travels, the electromagnetic spectrum, the entire electromagnetic spectrum works the same way. It travels in two directions. In one direction, it's radio frequency, and in the other direction, it's light. They're going in the same, and they're also going in orthogonal. Okay, like this, right? Only this. The thing is that in one direction, it carries energy, in the other direction, it carries information. Gravity works the same way. People think that gravity is a force that's pulling you. No. Gravity is just information that tells your mass to do something. Okay, and how your mass reacts is how it is affected by the information it's receiving. So if it does something or doesn't something, it's because of the information is selective to that mass. And this is the nature of God. People need to understand it, because what is God? God is source. What is source? Source is pure information, spiritual energy. It's nothing but thought, idea. That's all it is. That's what information is. So when we're getting these upgrades from the source, from the center of the galaxy, from God, whatever you want to call it, it's information traveling. When the information travels, it travels from matter. All matter gives off this information. So if there's the greatest amount of matter is at the center of the universe, that's where it's going to emanate. But it will also emanate from every black hole, every star, every planet, every tree, every human body, every molecule, etc., every cell. So in other words, dependent, for instance, it's like people think, well, if I'm going to go hide underground, like I tell you about this hollow earth having a plasma ball, that plasma ball is going to be generating the same information as source, okay? Because that's how source works. It's just information. When I do my healing, I'm getting, it's a two-way street. First, I send you energy, and you give me information. Then I send you information, and you give me energy. And that information, your information, the first information is telling me what's wrong, and the second information is recalibrating your information. That's all we do. That's how God works. There's so many examples, scientific examples of this out there, like the old tadpole and the salamander experiment. They had these embryos, a tadpole embryo and a salamander embryo, and this took place in Russia. They shined a laser through the tadpole into the embryo of the salamander, and the salamander turned into a tadpole. Its cells just reorganized and turned into a tadpole. And why is this? It's because the light carried the information. And it's the same way. And you got to remember, the light carried the information. So when I'm doing my healing and I'm I'm connecting to you via my thought. I see your image. This is like a road map, takes me right to you, right? I've got your name. I've got your face in my head. That's all I need. Now I can connect with you via the speed of light. I can send information to you. I can send a packet, if you will, just like a computer packet sent. That's how it works. Electromagnetic wave is like a packet traveling through space. It doesn't have to be, right? At light speed. And this is the thing about physics, is that using physics, you can actually measure this stuff. You can measure how big and thick it is, how big the face is, how long it is, how focused it is, how intense it is, how concentrated, all this stuff. It's all mathematics. It's crazy. And like I said, the constant is the speed of light. So, but I'll tell you one thing about the, just for the flat earth people and all that, the earth has been in battle for 25 million years with the Greys, the Anunnaki, and the reptilians. And you can't really say any side won, but the Greys did get their butts kicked pretty badly. They essentially got kicked off the earth, and the Reptoids took over their little underground structures. But they did inhabit the moon, and the moon was destroyed at one time, and it was rebuilt. And this is not a small thing. The Creator is actually involved in these actions. But when it was rebuilt, first of all, in such a way that it could not be destroyed again. It would be impervious to atomic bombs and this sort of thing. And second of all, it was given a specific radius.
Well, people say that
diameter.
It's like something that's been placed there because it's so precise.
It was. That's the point. There is no way on Earth, there's no way in the universe that we could have an eclipse. And the only way you can have an eclipse is if you've got a ball of the perfect diameter placed at the perfect distance to achieve that. And that sort of thing doesn't happen by accident, just like the satellite that revolves around us that never changes its side. It doesn't happen and the reason for that is because it is inhabited. There's like 250 million of these little gray aliens that live there, and that's their world. But guess what? There's like 250 million of these reptoids that live on Earth. But
well, basically,
that's why they want to kill us off.
Something I've kind of thought about recently, that the kind of agenda that's unfolding with 5G and vaccines and everything is because these reptiles or reptoids or creatures underground want the Earth back. They want us off the surface so that they can come out from these tunnels or whatever. Because they think this is their rightful home.
They want to geoengineer it, right?
Our human body, are we the original humans, or the Anunnaki? Did they create us? Did they tamper with our DNA? Did it shut our DNA down? Was there a version of humanoid here before our version? Or is there many versions and great resets that go on from time to time? Is this another reset? A lot of questions there. You know what I'm getting at?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, like I said, there was a 25 million year war, and the modern Earth humans. I like to think that we were put here to end it, but there was at least 8,000 different species. There still are 8,000 different species out there, but the Earth, it was home to about 8,000 different species, and these were driven off or killed off by these three aggressor species, and we were actually, yes, we were created. There's lots of references to this. The rabbis. I know you talk about these guys who they're, the Chabad rabbis. They like to say that the Goyim come from three separate demonic entities. Now, of course, that would be hybridization of the Greys, Reptoids, and Anunnaki. And of course, yes, that's true. They did all create hybrids, and that's where we all came from, and they've been using us to fight against each other. But I also believe there were other entities that were able to create hybrids, such as the Pleiadians, certainly, but I think they would be less inclined to do it. But I think there was another entity, a very powerful entity, that I think ultimately is responsible for a lot of the mayhem on Earth, and that is Lilith, who the Jews like to refer to as the original Eve.
It's kind of dark version.
She's still out there causing trouble.
Kind of destroyer.
Same sort of thing. I mean, mother of all demons, whatever you want to call her, I mean, but we worship her today. Once you realize how important Lilith is, it's not hard to see Lilith worship in modern culture. Like, for instance, your Starbucks coffee cup has a picture of Lilith right on it. And when you see Madonna with her funny little outfits, I mean, she's trying to be Lilith. That's Lilith. And, so a lot of that... a lot of the stuff that we attribute to Satan worship is actually pointed at Lilith. That's one of those big secrets that nobody really wants to talk about. And I'm not saying that Satan and Lilith aren't connected. Lilith was more like Lucifer's lover, okay? And I think that Lilith holds a grudge against all humans and God for basically breaking up her affair that she had with Lucifer, tossing her into the ocean. She's never going to. She doesn't want to forgive humans for that. So it's a woman gone wrong story.
Most of them, most people have gone wrong. I wouldn't just say women these days.
Well, look at how quickly you checked yourself. Look at that. Yeah. I you hear what I said, honey? I fixed it, right? Well, a spurned woman. Let's just say a spurned. It's a case of a love gone wrong. Okay, let me just. I don't want to. A lot of people think this is weird, but when you're dealing with demonic entities and stuff like that, especially like we're talking about the Cavers and the New World Order and the Cabal and all this business, people think, oh, we'll kill them and cut their heads off and it'll fix everything. You don't realize is that we can't be that bloodthirsty, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And ultimately, our higher level attributes, the ones that we are supposed to be building, are going to be what's going to bring us our victory. In other words, it's like, take somebody like Lilith, who's been waging war against humanity since the beginning. Ultimately, we're going to have to show her compassion. And I think this is the only way we're going to get her to give up and basically come back to the family. Because you got to remember, she was a human at one time. And it's just like all these other things, I mean, that doesn't mean they have to escape justice. Baby killers and what have you, they certainly can never live amongst civilized society again. But at the same time, if we're ever going to elevate and transition and join the ranks of the elite, or not, well, you know what I'm saying, the enlightened ones, we have to get rid of the savage.
There is a lot of people in this Q and Trump movement that are kind of bloodthirsty in themselves. They want to go after these people and hang them and take them to get more and all this kind of stuff. And
well, and why do you suppose that is? Because Donald Trump is a Chabad Jew, and these people are genocidal. And if you look at Donald Trump, anybody that did a scientific analysis of everything he's done since he became president, you will see that he has been the most divisive president of the United States since Abraham Lincoln, who basically presided over the Civil War. It doesn't get any more divisive than that, but somehow Donald Trump managed to beat that record, and he is now even more polarizing and he doesn't even hide it. And even his General Mathis that resigned because he was so disgusted with all this stuff, he said he's never seen a more immature leader and a more divisive leader who didn't make any effort to hide the fact that he's trying to be divisive.
When Trump first came into power, I just think he's just like every other politician. They're all just puppets. They're all just, told what to do. But the thing with Trump now is this kind of thing that's going on with the Q movement. The Q is not like an official thing. It's just this thing that people have latched onto. And then Trump's making the Q sign, and apparently his tweets are tying in with the Q thing. But that Q thing in itself is dividing up the truth movement, who would be united against, so again, the Black Lives Matter, and that's another divisive element. So all the time we're getting divided up. Yeah.
Well, if you read the protocols, right? I mean, obviously the protocols have to be everybody's roadmap because this is their roadmap. So if you realize the protocols, they say that every issue, every soapbox, every side of every issue, they will control. And they will have people in place to represent us. And so it makes, we've gotten so lazy and complacent, and I see it so often. Like, for instance, the enemy will create a movement. Obviously, the truth movement was us. And Q is nothing more than the NSA, and the NSA is nothing more than the same people that run these underground bunkers.
So why are they theoretically exposing it
Satan? So, well, because the best way to manage the people is to manage the dialogue, and if the dialogue is going in a direction that you don't like, then you need to manage that too. It's all about management. And for instance, obviously, the truth movement was something that they really couldn't stifle. So certainly they had to somehow hijack it and take it over. It's just like Roger Stone having to break into Facebook to try to take over my group. They can't have dissension. And so most of the people out there, the talking heads, especially in the Q movement, they're all getting paid. They're all in on it. And this polarity, this dual paradigm polarity system, my team against your team nonsense, as if the Republicans were incapable of doing evil and worshiping Satan as much as the Democrats. It's so naive. But the people, unfortunately, Trump has something like 70 million Twitter followers, and that's a good indication of just how bad it is. And the problem is that from a generational standpoint, you got some people who were bred to be really stupid, and they are hateful, and they are racist, and they are also very greedy. And unfortunately, it's like the nature of reality. It's like you're either going to go to Satan or you're going to go to the good side. And these guys have all chose the dark side. The only problem is that you've got a guy like Trump who's pretending to be this savior Christian selected by God when he's a Baal-worshipping secret Chabad member, just like his son-in-law and his daughter. And somehow everybody's missed that. And the other thing that's really crazy that I don't understand how these Trump fans have missed it. I know they're all stupid. They just can't, it goes right through their head. But there are so many people involved with Trump right now from his administration that went to jail. I can make a list of them, and they were all very, very close to people. Very, very close to Trump. And when you look, the other thing about his cabinet, by and large, almost without exception, they're all Jewish.
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to have to cut
just one thing when we're on that. What was I going to say? Yeah, how can people in the Q movement say, "Oh, look, he's pictured with Epstein. He's pictured with Epstein," and they're all bad guys because they're with Epstein and Maxwell. But Trump, he was just that was a coincidence. Mm-hmm. That just happened by accident. He was doing his research.
Yeah. He learned. Well, but here's the big thing that I want to leave you with this whole Epstein business is that, yeah, sure, they're pedophiles, they rape children, they do all that stuff, but by and large, all these TV watching people of the masses, the sheep, they're so caught up in their damn genitals that all they see is the diddling of the children, and they don't see the Mossad, they don't see the money laundering in the billions, trillions of money being laundered. They don't see the blackmailing and they don't see the evil hand of the enemy controlling our politics by getting these people in trouble. All they see is the damn.
Well, that's a big controller on planet Earth, and the amount of pornography and stuff as well, and the children get exposed to all this stuff. You know, things flashing up on the internet and all the rest of it. It's outrageous, and they could easily be stopped. You know, so it's just they don't have the will to do it, and the people are in control are evil, basically. And I don't.
Well, we got to have to get back together.
Yeah, there's
real
tons
soon
of avenues we can go down. Tony
more,
Z asked me to ask you a quick question. When I said I might be sent you an email, he said, "Where do you think the Queen is right now?" Because he says he thinks she's under the Getty in Denver Airport. Go back. Why do you say that?
Under the Getty.
Right.
Not Denver Airport, because that's where her throne is, not under Denver Airport. It's the Getty. Why do you think Andrew's over there? Or not Andrew, but Harry. Harry, where do you think Harry is? He's at the Getty. He's right there.
That's true, Yep.
He's like a couple miles
away. Okay, man, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We'll get back and delve into this further. I'll get this up on YouTube, and we'll take it from there. Okay, mate? Nice talking to you. Take care. Bye.
All right, dude. Take it easy, man. Nice talking to you. Bye-bye. How do we get out of here?